A TikTok trend involving school shooting threats is prompting closures across the country and action from law enforcement. But what's behind this disturbing challenge we're seeing, and how is TikTok's parent company reacting? For more on this story, we're going to turn to Bloomberg News' reporter Nick Querolo. Nick, welcome back to Quicktake. Start by just giving me the lowdown on these videos. What exactly are they, and when did this start happening?
So we started to hear some reports earlier this week of viral videos cropping up on TikTok and other social media platforms that were very vague messages that were warning of some sort of school shooting or bombing activity. Generally, those kinds of videos didn't name specific places, no schools, no districts, but they usually focused on December 17th. And so that gave a lot of pause to school officials and law enforcement officials. And we're kind of starting to see the backlash to that now.
So what are those law enforcement officials doing in response, and how do they kind of suss out the validity of these claims versus a definitely disturbing, but just a video that someone is making?
So generally, they're looking for specificity. We have seen some schools close buildings out of an abundance of caution. Other schools have brought in, additional police presence into their schools. But generally, the messages that we're hearing from local law enforcement officials and school officials is that these don't appear to be credible threats, and for that reason, they are generally keeping schools open. For, like I mentioned, just given the ambiguity of a lot of these
Right.
videos.
Sure. And do we know why this sort of started popping up? Is it a trend that, students are doing, or is it something more disturbing than that?
We don't really know that much. Some school officials have speculated that this was a way for students to try to cut class, and it morphed into something a little bit more sinister. But really, this is, just the nature of these videos and how quickly they can spread on social media makes it really difficult to say where it originated or who might have started these videos.
Yeah, of course. And I wonder, too, if there's any sort of legal ramifications in this for the students who've made these videos. Could they get into any sort of legal trouble?
I don't know for sure, but I know that schools have really gone above and beyond trying to, suss out where these are coming from.
Yeah.
It's probably a big question for school officials and lawmakers.
Yeah, and I should mention, in terms of the federal response, TikTok said that they are working with law enforcement to look into warnings about potential violence at these schools. I am curious what that tells you about kind of where TikTok sees their role coming in here, and specifically ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok. Do they see themselves as kind of needing to cooperate a little bit more than, say, other nameless social media platforms might if they were in the same situation?
That's a good question. We have seen statements so far from TikTok as well as some federal law enforcement agencies like the Department of Homeland Security, as well as the FBI. Generally, they have been pretty plain statements. They're just urging anybody with any information to come forward, and that they're so far are not aware of any really serious, credible threats to schools. It's a really good question. TikTok is concerned with this kind of trend that allegedly originated on its platform. They want to get to the source of where these come from, and it's a big question, not just for TikTok, but for Snapchat, where some of these videos have also been seen.
Sure. And also, I know that in your reporting, one of your sources talked about how it's not just this challenge. There's a history of problematic content on these platforms. What are you hearing in your reporting about kind of the potential normality of things like this, as scary as that might sound?
Yeah, a couple people put out statements saying that this is not the first time that a trend has kind of interfered with schools' ability to just educate students in a safe way. There was a
Yeah.
trend, I think, recently where students were being challenged to slap their teachers, and it really just, that one is obviously a little bit different from this, but
Yeah.
it does kind of bring into question what is the social media's platform to police these kinds of trends when they do interfere with school activities.
Yeah, and it's also just interesting to me the timing of this because it's right before the holidays, and we've been reporting all week on the university level, colleges closing because of COVID. So these schools are just dealing with a lot right now. In your reporting, have you spoken with any school officials who've given you any insight as to how they're thinking through their strategy for when to bring students into school versus keep them at home, and how much these TikTok videos kind of play a role in that decision?
In my mind, these are kind of two separate issues, the COVID and the social media challenge. But, you do mention in light of current events, there was, a legitimate shooting that happened in Michigan in late November. And then at that same school district, they received some sort of threat that was part of this social media trend. And I think that they chose to close schools partly because, the impact of a school shooting can really, shake up a town or a community. And there was just an abundance of caution, and parents voiced some real concern about going back into school, even though they deemed the threats not credible. So you're exactly right. There's a lot of stressors on schools and schools administrators right now.
And you mentioned what happened in Michigan, which is, of course, a horrible tragedy. But specifically, when I think about that story, there were so many missteps in handling that in so many ways that that event could have been avoided. Have you heard from any school officials about what they've done in response to that event and, again, these TikTok videos to increase safety for students?
Not specifically. I think it's kind of just a whole of school effort to, it takes a long time to kind of build people's trust back up and make them feel safe and comfortable coming back into their schools. But no specifics on that front.
All right. Well, Nick Querolo, really appreciate you giving us some context on this really important story. Thank you so much for joining us on that. Again, that was Bloomberg News reporter Nick Querolo joining us.